Hello everybody, what's here to you, and welcome back to Let's Play Tomb Raider Underworld. In the previous episode, we found Thor's gauntlet, and then it was taken from us because those guys were evil and mean. But in today's episode, we're gonna go swimming again, only to find that there's nothing down there. Seriously, don't bother looking because there's really nothing down there for you to explore right now. But what we can explore is bigger boats. It's kind of adorable. It makes our boat look like a baby boat. Okay, I'll stop being weird. I can't make any guarantees about that. But what I do really like about the design of the giant ship is you can see the rust on it, and it's just like a really cool detail, and I really love it. So going over here, we have to be quiet because there are bad guys on the boat. We have to sneak up on them. Sneak up on them. Be very, very careful. And they saw us anyway. I was whispering and everything. How rude. Alright, so you need to be careful fighting these enemies because they can actually deal quite a bit of damage. I'm playing on a pretty high difficulty level right now, just simply because of the fact that I feel like it. So you definitely want to be careful when you're fighting these enemies. If you're playing on the Wii version, the combat is much easier than it is on Xbox 360 and PS3, because your HP refills over time, and this leads into a huge problem I have with Tomb Raider Underworld on the Wii, which we'll be going over as we go through this area. First of all, I want to mention, if you're paying close attention, you may notice a familiar name on the crates over here. I won't specifically point it out because of reasons, but what I want to do is go over here and kick this guy in the face. Like, you can technically destroy all these guys just by kicking them, and it's pretty funny. You can pick those up, and I don't remember exactly what those are for. I think those are health packs. No, they're not. Okay. Well, we can throw a sticky grenade at that guy. Gotta go boom, boom. Alright then. Let's destroy you. Except that didn't work. Excuse me. Alright then. We're losing HP really quickly. We probably could change over to our harpoon gun, but it's probably not the best weapon of choice for fighting these enemies. Something really neat, I'm pretty sure I've mentioned this already, but in the HD versions of this game, Lara is able to fire at 2 enemies at once. This will make it so that you defeat these enemies a bit slower than if you were to use both weapons on them. It's very much like the splatter shot, not the splatter shot, the dual, what's the weapon called? The dualies in Splatoon 2. How the two individual splatter shot things that deal less damage than having both of them firing at the same time. We're losing a lot of HP. Wow. Probably not a good idea. But yeah, it's something that's very well worth mentioning. And what's also worth mentioning is okay, I'm going to try to be positive about this, but the combat in the Wii version of this game is a joke. It's probably my least favorite in the entire series. And the reason for that is because it's pretty much non-existent in the Wii version. Because you hardly face any enemies at all in the Wii version of Tomb Raider Underworld. And not just that, not only do you face enemies very infrequently, they deal very small amounts of damage. You're barely in any threat to actually die in Tomb Raider Underworld, except for stuff like hazards and things like that. So, from pure combat, you're pretty much at no risk of ever dying in Tomb Raider Underworld. And what's even worse about that, you automatically refill your HP in the Wii version, which is really silly, considering the fact that you hardly ever face any enemies at all in that game. So, this kind of leads into a theory that I have about the Wii version. My theory is that the Wii version of Tomb Raider Underworld was the beta build of the game that just ended up being released because they ran out of time to probably finish the Wii and PS2 versions of the game. That's just my personal theory. We'll probably go into more detail later on in the game as we see more differences between the Wii and Xbox 360 versions of the game. But that's something I want to bring to your attention. He turned inside out, then he exploded. Awesome points to get the reference.
Damn, it's too small. Only Lara can use it now. Until I kill her. Even that won't unbind the artifact. We're taking on water. Damn it! We'll pick this up again later. I'm very pleased to see you again, Lara. This specimen jar offers little in the way of amusement, so I've grown fond of watching Amanda suffer the effects of sharing your interests.
Jacqueline Mather, you just don't know when to die.
A trait we have in common.
It was you who told Amanda about Avalon.
Our time is short, so choose your questions carefully.
What do you know about my mother?
The Deus you and she found in Nepal is part of a travel network, so to speak. It took your mother to Avalon.
My father thought Avalon was below, but that's Niflheim. What's the Norse connection?
Ah, Richard found the wrong Norse underworld. Your mother didn't go to Niflheim. She went to Helheim.
Where is it?
I will tell you where it is, one day. But when that day comes, you'll need Thor's hammer to get inside. Perhaps you'll have better luck finding it than your father did.
What do you mean?
Your answer is on the west coast of Thailand. Send it parallel.
Now, while I would end the video off because the level is over, these levels actually are very short, so I'm just going to merge these two levels into one video, just because I feel like it. But while we go through this area, I gotta say, I'm so happy that Natla returned in Tomb Raider Underworld, because there was something that really rubbed me the wrong way about Tomb Raider Anniversary. Natla is like one of the best villains in the Tomb Raider series. And I kind of felt like her death was a bit cheap in Anniversary. So this right here, this replaces a quick time event, so where time slows down and you only have a few seconds to react to what's going on around you, which I think is a much better, which I think is much better than quick time events from Legend Anniversary. But going back to my point, I'm really happy they did that because I felt that Natla's death in Anniversary was a little bit cheap. How the pillar just kind of like fell on her because. Because it's very well established that she's like a god, and I just felt like if she really was as powerful as the game was making her out to be, then that wouldn't have finished her off for good. And as you can see now, it didn't, and I'm very happy that that was the case, because Natla is easily one of my favorite villains in the Tomb Raider series, if not my absolute favorite. And we have some pretty fun platforming over here.
Amanda has never forgiven me for believing she was dead and leaving her buried in the Peruvian tomb of the last queen of Tiwanaku. When I found out she had survived and later escaped, I wondered if I too could forgive myself. But our clash over the search of King Arthur's sword Excalibur, dueled by guilt, and knowing now that Amanda played a role in what happened to my mother, has squashed the feeling entirely. The only reason I let her live was to someday learn more of what she knows. But if her aim is to kill me outright, I might have to change that strategy. Natla was the immortal queen of Atlantis and, more recently, CEO of Natla Technologies. Somehow, she lost her connection with the powerful artifacts of her reign millennia ago, and recently began devoting her knowledge and intellect towards recovering it all from ancient sites around the world. Her aim is to initiate what she called the Seventh Age, of which I know nothing other than it would be a very bad turn for humanity. I buried her on a remote island, but apparently Amanda has dug her out and is keeping her prisoner as her own personal Encyclopedia Atlantica. I hope Amanda understands that she's sitting on a time bomb, and that everything Natla tells her is filtered by her own agenda.